All right, we are live. Go. Today we're continuing with finding all the books in Morrowind and reading them. Hopefully we're back. For some reason, my Ethernet cable has decided to start being finicky and not work. For some reason. It just stopped working. Alright, let's get in a good position. There we go. Alright. Should be just about set. There we go. Load on in. Cool. We are good to go. Alright, so... Actually, where did I put my notebook? Oh man, I did not prepare for the stream. There it is, but I don't have a pen. Okay. Alright, I know where a pen is.
Watching you, scum.
Where did I put my pen? Well, I'll settle for this pen, I guess. It's not the same pen I've been using. Alright. There we go. Should be good to go. Now, at least, hopefully. I think I have everything.
We're watching you, scum.
Yeah. Okay. So, that's fine. So today, I think at the very start we're gonna have tons of books available to read because I just found this bookstore. Hold on, is the game audio way too loud?
Move along.
That's a bit loud, maybe. I'll turn the game volume in-game down a little bit, maybe. That didn't really change anything. Alright, let's put it, like, right here, maybe. Okay, it just wasn't drastic enough of a change before. Okay.
3 gods, 1 true faith.
Cool. Anyway, we found this bookstore last time, after searching for a while, and there are a lot of books here that I haven't read, I'm pretty sure. So, to start off, I think it's only right to go with The Real Baron Zaya, Volume 5, which wasn't at the Library of Vivek. So it'll be interesting to see if there's a reason for that. At least I think. There we go. Volume 5. Ooh. Alright. So let's get right on into that. The Real Baron Zaya, Part 5. As Symmachus had predicted, the theft of the Staff of Chaos had few short-term consequences. The current Emperor, Uriel Septim, sent some rather stiff messages expressing shock and displeasure at the staff's disappearance, and urging Symmachus to make every effort to locate its whereabouts and communicate developments to the newly appointed Imperial Battle Mage, Jagar Tharn, in whose hands the matter had been placed. Tharn, Symmachus thundered in disgust and frustration as he paced about the small chamber where Baron Zaya, now some months pregnant, was sitting, serenely embroidering a baby blanket. Jagar Tharn, indeed, I wouldn't give him directions for crossing the street. Not if he were a doddering old blind sot. What have you against him, love? I just don't trust that mongrel elf. Part dark elf, part high elf, and part the gods only know what. All the worst qualities of all of his combined bloods. I'll warrant, he snorted. No one knows much about him, claims he was born in southern Valenwood of a wood-elven mother, seems to have been everywhere since. Baron's eyes sunk in the contentment and lassitude of pregnancy, had only been humoring Symmachus thus far. But now, she suddenly dropped her needlework and looked at him. Something had piqued her interest. Symmachus, could this Jagar Tharn have been the nightingale disguised? Symmachus thought this over before replying, Nay, my love. Human blood seems to be one missing component in Tharn's ancestry. To Symmachus, Baron Zaya knew that was a flaw. Her husband despised wood elves as lazy thieves and high elves as effete intellectuals, but he admired humans, especially Bretons, for their combined pragmatism, intelligence, and energy. The Nightingales of Ebonheart, of the Rathian clan of House Lalu, the House of Mora in particular, I'll be bound, that house has had human blood in it since her time. Ebonheart was jealous that the staff was laid here when Tiber Septim took the horn of summoning from us. Baron's eye sighed a little. The rivalry between Ebonheart and Mournhold had reached almost to the dawn of Morrowind's history. Once the two nations had been won, all the lucrative mines held in fief by the Rathims, whose nobility retained the high kingship of Morrowind. Ebonheart had split into two separate city-states, Ebonheart and Mournhold. When Queen Leon's twin sons, grandson of the legendary King Morrelaine, the legendary king were left as joint heirs. At about the same time, the office of High King was vacated in favor of a temporary war leader to be named by council in times of provincial emergency. Still, Ebonheart remained jealous of her prerogatives as the eldest city-state of Morrowind. First among equals was the phrase its rulers often quoted, and claimed that rightful guardianship of the Staff of Chaos should have been entrusted to its ruling house. Mournhold responded that King Morrelaine himself had placed the staff in the keeping of the god Fn, and Mournhold was unarguably the god's birthplace. Why not tell Jagar Tharn of your suspicion then? Let him recover the thing. As long as it's safe, what does it matter who recovers it or where it lies? Symmachus stared at her without comprehension. It matters, he said softly after a while, but I suppose not that much. He added, certainly not enough for you to concern yourself further with it. You just sit there and tend to your, and here he smiled at her wickedly, embroidery. Baron's eye flung the sampler at him. It hit Symmachus square in the face, needle and thimble and all. In a few more months, Baranzai gave birth to a fine son, whom they named Helseth. Nothing more was heard of the Staff of Chaos or the Nightingale. If Ebenard had the staff in its possession, they certainly did not boast of it. The years passed swiftly and happily. Helseth grew tall and strong. He was much like his father, whom he worshipped. When Helseth was 8 years old, Baranzai bore a second child, a daughter to Symmachus' lasting delight. Helseth was his pride, but little Morgaya, named for Symmachus' mother, held his heart. Sadly, the birth of Morgaya was not the harbinger of better times ahead. Relations with the Empire slowly deteriorated for no apparent reason. Taxes were raised and quotas increased with each passing year. Symmachus felt the Emperor had suspected him of having had a hand in the staff's disappearance, and sought to prove his loyalty by making every effort to comply with the escalating demands. He lengthened working hours and raised tariffs, and even made up some of the differences from the royal exchequer and their own private holdings. But the levies multiplied, and the commoners and nobles alike began to complain. It was an ominous rumble. "I want you to take the children and journey to the imperial city," Symmachus said at last in desperation one evening after dinner. "You must take the emperor. Listen, else all Mournhold will be up in revolt come spring." He grinned forcibly. "You have a way with men, love. You always did." Baranzai forced a smile of her own. "Even with you, I take it?" "Yes, especially with me," he acknowledged amiably. "Both children?" Baranzai looked over toward a corner window where Helseth was strumming a lute and crooning a duet with his little sister. Helseth was 15 by then, Morgaya 8. They might soften his heart. Besides, it's high time Helseth was presented before the imperial court. Perhaps, but that's not your true reason. Baranzai took a deep breath and grasped the nettle. "You don't think you can keep them safe here." "If that's the case, then you're not safe here either. Come with us," she urged. He took her hands in his. "Baranzai, my love, heart of my heart, if I leave now, there will be nothing for us to return to. Don't worry about me. I'll be alright. I can take care of myself, and I can do it better if I'm not worrying about you or the children." Baranzai laid her head against his chest. "Just remember that we need you. I need you. We can do without the rest of it, if we have each other. Empty hands and empty bellies are easier to bear than an empty heart." She started to cry, thinking of the Nightingale and that sordid business with the staff. "My foolishness has brought us to this pass." He smiled at her tenderly. "If so, 'tis not so bad a place to be." His eyes rested indulgently on their children. "None of us shall ever go without, or want for anything. Ever, ever, my love. I promise you, I cost you everything once, Baranzai. I and Tiber Septim, without my aid, the Empire would never have begun. I helped its rise," he's hardened. "I can bring about its fall. You may tell Uriel Septim that. And that my patience is not infinite." Baranzai gasped. Symmachus was not given empty threats. She'd no more imagined that he would ever turn against the Empire than that the old house wolf lying by her grate would turn on her. "How?" she demanded breathlessly, but he shook his head. "Better that you not know," he said. "Just tell him what I told you, should he prove recalcitrant. And do not fear, he's Septim, enough that I will not take it out on the messenger." He smiled grimly, "For if he does, if he ever harms the least hair on you, my love or the children, so help me all the gods of Tamriel, he'll pray that he hadn't been born. I'll hunt him down, him and his entire family. I won't rest until the last Septim is dead." The red, dark elven eyes of Symmachus gleamed brightly in the ebbing firelight. "I plight you that oath, my love, my queen, my Baranzai." Baranzai held him as tight as she could, but in spite of the warmth in his embrace, she couldn't help shivering. Baranzai stood before the Emperor's throne, trying to explain Mournhold's straits. She'd waited weeks for an audience with Uriel Septim, having been fobbed off on his pretext or that His Majesty is indisposed. An urgent matter demands His Excellency's attention. I'm sorry, Your Highness, there must be some mistake. Your appointment is for next week. No, see? And now it wasn't even going well. The Emperor did not even make the slightest pretense at listening to her. He hadn't invited her to sit, nor had he dismissed the children. Helsed stood still as a carven image, but little Morgaya had begun to fuss. The state of her own mind didn't help her any. Shortly upon arrival at her lodgings, the Mornholdian ambassador to the imperial city had demanded entry, bringing with him a sheaf of dispatches from Symmachus. Bad news, and plenty of it. The revolt had finally begun. The peasants had organized around a few disgruntled members of Mornhold's minor nobility and were demanding Symmachus step down and hand over the reins of government. Only the Imperial Guard and a handful of troops whose families had been retainers of Baron Zaya's house for generations stood between Symmachus and the rabble. Hostilities had already broken out, but apparently Symmachus was safe and still in control. Not for long, he wrote. He entreated Baron Zaya to try her best with the Emperor. But in any case, she was to stay in the Imperial City until he wrote her to tell her it was safe to go back home with the children. She had tried to barge her way through the imperial bureaucracy with little success, and to add to her growing panic, all news from Mornhold had come to a sudden stop. Tottering between rage at the Emperor's numerous major domos and fear of the fate awaiting her and her family, the weeks had passed by tensely, agonizingly, remorselessly. Then, one day, the Mornholdian ambassador came calling to tell her that she should expect news from the Symmachus the following night at the latest. Not through the regular channels, but by Nighthawk. Seemingly by some stroke of luck, she was informed that same day by a clerk from the imperial court that Uriel Septim had finally consented to grant her an audience early on the morrow. The Emperor had greeted the three of them when they came into the audience chamber with a too bright smile of welcome that nonetheless didn't reach his eyes. Then, as she presented her children, he had gazed at them with a fixed attention that was real, yet somehow inappropriate. Baron Zaya had been dealing with humans for nearly 500 years now, and had developed the skill of reading their expressions and movements that was far beyond what any human could ever perceive. Try as the Emperor might to conceal it, there was a hunger in his eyes, and something else. Regret? Yes, regret, but why? He had several fine children of his own, why covet hers? And why look at her with such a vicious, however brief, yearning? Perhaps he had tired of his consort. Humans were notoriously, though predictably, inconstant. After that one long, burning glance, his gaze had shifted away as she began to speak of her mission and the violence that had erupted in Mornhold. He sat still as stone throughout her entire account. Puzzled at his inertia and vexed no end, Baron Zaya stared into the pale, set face, looking for some trace of the Septims she'd known in the past. She'd known Uriel Septim well, having met him once when he was still a child, and then again at his coronation 20 years before. Twice, that was all. He'd been a stern and dignified presence at the ceremony, even as a young adult, yet not icily remote as this more mature man was. In fact, despite the physical resemblance, he didn't seem to be at all the same man. Not the same, yet something about him was familiar to her. More familiar than it should be. Some trick of posture or gesture? Suddenly, she felt very hot, as if lava had been poured over her. Illusion. She had studied the arts of illusion well since the nightingale had deceived her so badly. She had learned to detect it, and she felt it now, as certainly as a blind man could feel the sun on his face. Illusion. But why? Her mind worked furiously, even as her mouth went on, reciting details about Mornhold's troubles. Vanity? Humans were often as ashamed as the signs of aging as elves were proud to exhibit them, yet the face Uriel Septim wore seemed consistent with his age. Baron Zaya dared use none of her own magic. Even petty nobles had means of detecting magicka, if not actually shielding themselves from its effects within their own halls. The use of sorcery here would bring down the Emperor's wrath as surely as drawing a dagger would. Magic. Illusion. Suddenly she was brought to mind of the nightingale, and then he was sitting before her. Then the vision changed, and it was Uriel Septim. He looked sad, trapped. And then the vision faded once more, and another man sat in his place, like the nightingale, yet unlike. Pale skin, bloodshot eyes, elven ears, and about him a fierce glow of a concentrated malice and an aura of eldritch energy, a horrible, destructive shimmer. This man was capable of anything. And then once again she was looking into the face of Uriel Septim. How could she be sure she wasn't imagining things? Perhaps her mind was playing tricks on her. She felt a sudden vast weariness, as if she'd been carrying a heavy burden too long and too far. She decided to abandon her earnest narrative of Mournhold's ills, as it was quite plainly getting her nowhere, and switch back to pleasantry. Pleasantry, however, with a hidden agenda. Do you remember, sire, Symmachus and I had dinner with your family shortly after your father's coronation? You were no older than tiny Morgaya here. We were greatly honored to be the only guests that evening, except for your best friend Justin, of course. Ah, yes, the Emperor said, smiling cautiously, very cautiously. I do believe I recall that. You and Justin were such friends, Your Majesty. I was told he died not long after. A great pity. Indeed, I still do not like to speak of him. His eyes turned blank, or blanker, if it had been possible. As for your request, milady, we shall take it under advisement and let you know. Baronzaya bowed, as did the children. A nod from the Emperor dismissed them, and they backed away from the imperial presence. She took a deep breath when they emerged from the throne room. Justin had been an imaginary playmate, although young Uriel had insisted a place be set for Justin at every meal. Not only that, Justin, despite the boyish name, had been a girl. Symmachus had kept up the joke long after she had gone the way of imaginary childhood friends, inquiring after Justin's health whenever he and Uriel Septim met, and being responded to in as mock-serious a fashion. The last Baronzaya had heard of Justin several years ago, the Emperor had evidently joked elaborately to Symmachus that she had met an adventurous, though incorrigible Khajiit youth, married him, and settled down in a little landrill to raise fire ferns and mugworts. The man sitting on the Emperor's divan was not Uriel Septim. The nightingale? Could it be? Yes, yes. A chord of recognition rang through her, and Baronzaya knew she was right. It was him. It was. The nightingale, masquerading as the Emperor. Symmachus had been wrong. So wrong. What now? She wondered frantically. What had become of Uriel Septim? And more to the point, what did it mean for her and Symmachus, and all of Mournhold? Thinking back, Baronzaya guessed that their troubles were due to this false emperor, this nightingale-spawned glamour, or whatever he really was. He must have taken Uriel Septim's place shortly before the unreasonable demands on Mournhold had begun. That would explain why relations had deteriorated for so long, as humans reckon time, long after her disapproved liaison with Tiber Septim. The Nightingale knew of Symmachus's famed loyalty to and knowledge of the Septim House, and was effecting a preemptive strike. If that were the case, they were all in terrible danger. She and the children were in his power here in the Imperial City, and Symmachus was left alone to deal with troubles of the Nightingale's brewing in Mournhold. What must she do? Baronzaya impelled the children ahead of her, a hand on each shoulder, trying to stay cool, collected, her ladies-in-waiting and personal knight's escort trailing behind. Finally, they reached their waiting carriage. Even though their suite of rooms was only a few blocks from the palace, royal dignity forbade traveling on foot for even short distances, and for once, Baronzaya was glad for it. The carriage seemed a kind of refuge now, false as she knew the feeling must be. The boy dashed up to one of the guards and handed him a scroll, then pointed toward the carriage. The guard brought it to her. The boy waited, eyes wide and shining. The epistle was brief and complimentary, and simply inquired if the King Edwire of Wayrest of the province of High Rock might be granted an audience with the famed Queen Baronzaya of Mournhold, as he had heard much of her and would be pleased to make her acquaintance. Baronzaya's first impulse was to refuse. She wanted only to leave this city. Certainly she had no inclinations toward any dalliance with a dazzled human. She looked up, frowning, and one of the guards said, "Milady, the boy says his master awaits your reply yonder." She looked in the direction indicated and saw a handsome elderly man on horseback, surrounded by half a dozen courtiers and cavaliers. He caught her eye and bowed, respectfully taking off a plumed hat. "Very well," Baronziah said to the boy on impulse. "Tell your master he may call on me tonight after the dinner hour." King Edwire looked polite and grave and rather worried, but not in the least love-struck. At least, that was something she thought pensively. Baronziah stood at the tower window waiting. She could sense the familiar nearness, but, though the night sky was clear as day to her eyes, she could not yet see him. Then suddenly he was there, a swift-moving dot beneath the wispy night clouds. A few more minutes and the great nighthawk finished its descent, wings folding, talons reaching for a thick leather armband. She carried the bird to its perch where it waited, panting as her impatient fingers felt for the message secured in a capsule on the one leg. The hawk drank mightily from the water till when she had done, then ruffled its feathers and preened, secure in her presence. A tiny part of her consciousness shared its satisfaction at a job well done, mission accomplished, and rest earned. Yet, beneath it all was unease. Things were not right. Oh my goodness. Even to its humble avian mind, her fingers shook as she unfolded the thin parchment and pored over the cramped writing. Not Simkis's bold hand. Baronziah sat slowly, fingers smoothing the document while she prepared her mind and body to accept disaster calmly, if disaster it would be. Disaster it was. The Imperial Guard had deserted Symmachus and joined the rebels. Symmachus was dead. The remaining loyal troops had suffered a decisive defeat. Symmachus was dead. The rebel leader had been recognized as King of Mournhold by Imperial envoys. Symmachus was dead. Baronziah and the children had been declared traitors to the Empire and a price set on their heads. Symmachus was dead. So the audience with the Emperor earlier that morning had been nothing but a blind ruse, a charade. The Emperor must have already known. She was just being strung along, told to stay put, take things easy. Milady, Queen, enjoy the Imperial City and the delights it has to offer. Do make your stay as long as you want. Her stay, her detention, her captivity, and in all probability her impending arrest. She had no delusions about her situation. She knew the Emperor and his minions would never let her leave the Imperial City, ever again, at least not alive. Symmachus was dead. "Milady?" Baronziah jumped, startled by the servant's approach. "What is it?" "The Breton is here, milady, King Edwire," the woman added, hopefully noting Baronziah's incomprehension. She hesitated. "Is there any news, milady?" she said, nodding toward the Nighthawk. "Nothing that will not wait," Baronziah said quickly, and her voice seemed to echo in the emptiness, then suddenly yawned like a gaping abyss inside her. "See to the bird." She stood up, smoothed her gown, and prepared to attend on her royal visitor. She felt numb as the stone walls around her, numb as the quiescence of the night air, numb as a lifeless corpse. Symmachus was dead. King Edwire greeted her gravely and courteously, if a bit fulsomely. He claimed to be a fervent admirer of Symmachus, who figured prominently in his family's legends. Gradually, he turned the conversation to her business with the Emperor. He inquired after details and asked if the outcome had been favorable to Mournhold. Finding her non-committal, he suddenly blurted out, "Milady Queen, you must believe me. The man who claims himself the Emperor is an impostor. I know it sounds mad, but I—" "No," Baronziah said with sudden decisiveness. "You are entirely correct, my Lord King. I know." Edward relaxed into his seat for the first time, eyes suddenly shrewd. "You know? You're not just humoring someone you might think a madman? I assure you, my lord, I am not. She took a brief breath. And who do you surmise is dissembling as the Emperor? The Imperial Battle Mage Jagar Tharn. Ah, my lord king, have you perchance heard of someone called the Nightingale? Yes, my lady. As a matter of fact, I have. My allies and I believe him to be one and the same man as the renegade Tharn. I knew it. Baronzai stood up and tried to mask her upheaval. The Nightingale, Jagar Tharn. Oh, but the man was a demon. Diabolical and insidious, and so very clever. He had contrived their downfall seamlessly, perfectly. Symmachus, my Symmachus. Edouard coughed diffidently. Milady, we need your aid. Baronzai smiled grimly at the irony. I do believe I should be the one saying those words. But go on, please. Of what assistance might I be, my lord king? Quickly, the monarch outlined a plot. The mage Rhea Silmain, of late apprenticed to the vile Jagar Tharn, had been killed and declared a traitor by the false emperor. Yet she retained a bit of her powers and could still contact a few of those she had known well on the mortal plane. She had chosen a champion who would undertake to find the Staff of Chaos, which had been hidden by the traitorous sorcerer in an unknown site. This champion was to wield the staff's power to destroy Jagar Tharn, who is otherwise invulnerable, and rescue the true emperor being held prisoner in another dimension. However, the champion, while thankfully still alive, now languished in the Imperial dungeons. Tharn's attention must be diverted while the Chosen One gained freedom. With Rhea's spirit's help, Baronzai had the false emperor's ear, and seemingly his eyes. Would she provide the necessary distraction? I suppose I could obtain another audience with him, Baronzai said carefully. But would that be sufficient? I must tell you that my children and I have just recently been declared traitors to the Empire. In Mournhold, perhaps, milady, and Morrowind, things are different in the Imperial City and the Imperial Province. The same administrative morass that makes it near impossible to obtain an audience with the Emperor and his ministers also quite assures that you would never be unlawfully imprisoned or otherwise punished without benefit of due legal process. In your case, milady, and your children's, the situation is further exacerbated by your royal rank. As queen and heirs apparent, your persons are considered inviolable. Sacrosanct, in fact, the king grinned. The imperial bureaucracy, milady, is a double-edged claymore. So, at least she and her children were safe for the time being. Then a thought struck her. My lord king, what did you mean earlier when you said I had the false emperor's eyes? And seemingly at that. Edouard looked uncomfortable. It was whispered among the servants that Jagar Tharn kept your likeness in a sort of shrine in his chamber. I see. Her thoughts wandered momentarily to that insane romance of hers with the Nightingale. She had been madly in love with him. Foolish woman. And the man she had once loved had caused to be killed the man she truly did love. Loved. He's gone now. She still couldn't bring herself to accept the fact that Symmachus was dead. But even if he is, she told herself firmly, my love is alive and remains. He would always be with her, as would the pain of living the rest of her life without him, the pain of trying to survive each day, each night without his presence, his comfort, his love. The pain of knowing he would never see his children grow into a fine pair of adults, who would never know their father, how brave he was, how strong, how wonderful, how loving, especially little Morgaya. And for all you have done to my family, Nightingale, you must die. Does that surprise you? Edouard's words broke into her thoughts. What? Does what surprise me? Your likeness in Tharn's room. Oh, her features said imperturbably, yes and no. Edouard could see from her expression that she wished to change its subject. He turned once again to their plans. Our chosen one may need a few days to escape, my lady. Can you gain him a bit more time? You trust me in this, my lord king? Why? We are desperate, my lady. We have no choice, but even if we did, Why, yes, I would trust you. I do trust you. Your husband has been good to my family over the years. The Lord Symmachus is dead. What? Baronziah related the recent events quickly and coolly. Milady, Queen, but how dreadful. I'm so sorry. For the first time, Baronziah's glacial poise was shaken in the face of sympathy. She felt her outward calm start to crumble. She gathered her composure and willed herself to stillness. Under the circumstances, milady, we can hardly ask. Nay, good my lord, under the circumstances I must do what I may to avenge myself upon the murderer of my children's father. A single tear escaped the fortress of her eyes. She brushed it away impatiently. In return, I ask only that you protect my orphan children as you may. Edward drew himself up. His eyes shone. Willingly do I, so pledge, most brave and noble queen, the gods of our beloved land, indeed Tamriel itself be my witness. His words touched her absurdly, yet profoundly. I thank you from the bottom of my heart and my soul. Good my lord, King Edward, you have mine and my children's everlasting She broke down. She did not sleep that night, but sat in a chair beside her bed, hands folded in her lap, thinking deep and long into the waxing and waning of the darkness. She would not tell the children, not yet, not until she must. She had no need to seek another audience with the Emperor. A summon arrived at first light. She told the children she expected to be gone a few days, and bade them give the servants no trouble, and kiss them goodbye. Morgana whimpered a bit. She was bored and lonely in the imperial city. Helseth looked dour, but said nothing. He was very like his father. At the imperial palace, Baronziah was escorted into the great audience hall, but to a small parlor where the emperor sat at a solitary breakfast. He nodded a greeting and waved his hand toward the window. Magnificent view, isn't it? Baronziah stared out over the towers of the great city. It dawned on her that this was the very chamber where she first met Tiber Septim all those years ago. Centuries ago. Tiber Septim, another man she had loved. Who else had she loved? Symmachus, Tiber Septim, and Straw? She remembered the big blonde stable boy with sudden and intense affection. She never realized it till now, but she had loved Straw. Only she had never let him know. She had been so young then. Those had been carefree days, halcyon days. Before everything, before all this, before him. Not Symmachus, the nightingale. She was shocked in spite of herself. The man could still affect her. Even now, even after all that had happened, a strong wave of inchoate emotion swept over her. When she turned back at last, Uriel Septim had vanished, and the nightingale sat in his place. You knew, he said quietly, scanning her face. You knew instantly. I wanted to surprise you. You might at least have pretended. Baronziah spread her arms, trying to pacify the maelstrom churning deep inside her. I'm afraid my skill at pretense is no match for yours, my liege. He sighed. You're angry. Just a little, I must admit, she said icily. I don't know about you, but I find betrayal a trifle offensive. How human of you. She took a deep breath. What do you want of me? Now you're pretending. He stood up to face her directly. You know what I want. Of you? You want to torment me. Go ahead. I'm in your power, but leave my children alone. No, I don't want that at all, Baronziah. He came near, speaking low in the old caressing voice that had sent shivers cascading through her body. The same voice that was doing the same thing to her, here and now. Don't you see? This was the only way. His hands closed on her arms. She felt her resolve fading, her disgust at him weakening. You could have taken me with you. Unbidden tears gathered in her eyes. He shook his head. I didn't have the power. Ah, but now I have it all. Mine to have, mine to share, mine to give, to you. He once more waved his hand toward the window and the city beyond. All Tamriel is mine to lay at your feet, and that is only the beginning. It's too late, you left me to him. He's dead. The peasant's dead. A scant few years, what do they matter? The children can be adopted by me, and we'll have others together. Baron Zaya, and oh, and what children they'll be, what things we shall pass on to them, your beauty and my magic. I have powers you haven't even dreamed of, not in your most untamed imaginings. He moved to kiss her. She slipped his grasp and turned away. I don't believe you. You do. You know. You're still angry, that's all. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Tell me what you want, Baron Zaya. Baron Zaya, my beloved, tell me, and it shall be yours. Her whole life flashed in front of her. The past, the present, the future still to come. Different times, different lives, different Baron Zayas. Which one was the real one? Which one was the real Baron Zaya? For by that choice she would determine the shape of her fate. She made it, she knew. She knew who the real Baron Zaya was and what she wanted. A walk in the garden, my liege, she said. A song or two, perhaps. The nightingale laughed. You want to be courted. And why not? You do it so well. It's been long, besides, since I've had the pleasure. He smiled. As you wish, my lady, Queen Baron Zaya. Your wish is my command. He took her hand and kissed it. Now and forever. And so they spent their days in courtship, walking, talking, singing, and laughing together while the Empire's business was left to subordinates. I'd like to see the staff, Baron Zaya said idly one day. I only had a glimpse of it, you'll recall. He frowned. Nothing would give me greater pleasure, heart's delight, but that would be impossible. You don't trust me, Baron Zaya pouted, but softened her lips when he leaned over for a kiss. Nonsense, love. Of course I do, but it isn't here. He chuckled. In fact, it isn't anywhere. He kissed her again, more passionately this time. You're talking riddles again. I want to see it. You couldn't have destroyed it. Ah, you've gained in wisdom since we last met. You inspire my hunger for knowledge somewhat. She stood up. The Staff of Chaos can't be destroyed, and it can't be removed from Tamriel, not without the direst consequences to the land itself. Ah, you impress me, my love. All true. It is not destroyed, and it is not removed from Tamriel. And yet, as I said, it isn't anywhere. Can you solve the puzzle? He pulled her to him, and she leaned into his embrace. Here's the greater riddle still. How does one make one of two? That I can, and will show you. Their bodies merged, limbs tangled together. Later, when they had drawn a bit apart, he lay dozing. She thought sleepily, one of two, two of one, three of two, two of three. What cannot be destroyed or banished might be split apart, perhaps. She stood up, eyes blazing. She started to smile. The nightingale kept a journal. He scribbled entries onto it every night after quick reports from underlings. It was locked in a bureau, but the lock was a simple one. She had, after all, been a member of the Thieves' Guild in a past life. In another life, another Baron Zaya. One morning, Baron Zaya managed to sneak a quick look at it while he was occupied at his toilet. She discovered that the first piece of the Staff of Chaos was hidden in an ancient dwarvish mine called Fang Lair, although its location was given only in the vaguest of terms. The diary was crammed with jotted events in an odd shorthand and was very hard to decipher. All Tamriel, she thought, in his hands and mine, and more, perhaps. And yet, for all his exterior charm, there was a cold emptiness where his heart should have been. A vacuum of which he was quite unaware, she thought. One could glimpse it now and then, where his eyes would go blank and hard, and yet, though he had a different concept of it, he yearned for happiness too, and contentment. Peasant dreams, Baron Zaya thought, and Straw flashed before her eyes again, looking lost and sad. And then Theris, with a feline Khajiit smile, Tiber Septim, powerful and lonely, Simicus, solid and stolid Simicus, who did what ought to be done, quietly and efficiently. The nightingale, a riddle and a certainty, both the darkness and the light, the nightingale who would rule all and more, and spread chaos in the name of order. Baranzaya got reluctant leave from him to visit her children who had yet to be told of their father's death, and of the Emperor's offer of protection she finally did. It wasn't easy. Morgaya clung to her for what seemed an era, sobbing wretchedly while Helseth ran off into the garden to be alone, afterwards refusing all her attempts to speak to him on the subject of his father, or even to let her hold him to her breast. Edwire called on her while she was there. She told him what she had discovered so far, explaining that she must remain a while yet and learn more as she could. The Nightingale teased her about her elderly admirer. He was quite aware of Edwire's suspicion, but he wasn't the least bit perturbed, for no one took the old fool seriously. Baranzaya even managed to arrange a reconciliation of sorts between them. Edwire publicly recanted his misgivings, and his old friend, the Emperor, forgave him. He was afterward invited to dine with them at least once a week. The children liked Edwire, even Helseth, who disapproved of his mother's liaison with the Emperor and consequently detested him. He had become surly and temperamental as the days passed, and frequently quarreled with both his mother and her lover. Edwire was not happy with the affair either, and the Nightingale took great delight at times in openly displaying his affection for Baranzaya just to nettle the old man. They could not marry, of course, for Uriel Septim was already married, at least not yet. The Nightingale had exiled the Empress shortly after taking the Emperor's place, but had not dared harm her. She was given sanctuary by the Temple of the One. It had been given out that she was suffering from ill health, and rumors had circulated by the Nightingale's agents that she had mental problems. The Emperor's children had likewise been dispatched to various prisons all across Tamriel, disguised as schools. "She'll grow worse in time," the Nightingale said carelessly, referring to the Empress and eyeing Baranzaya's swollen breasts and swelling belly with satisfaction. As for their children, well, life is full of hazards, isn't it? We'll be married. Your child will be my true heir. He did not want the child. Baranzaya was sure of that. She was far less sure, however, of his feelings for her. They argued continually, now often violently, usually about Helseth, whom he wanted to send away to school in Somerset, Isle, the province farthest from the imperial city. Baranzaya made no effort to avoid these altercations. The Nightingale, after all, had no interest in a smooth, unruffled life, and besides, he thoroughly enjoyed making up afterwards. Occasionally, Baranzaya would take the children and retreat to their old apartment, declaring she wanted no more to do with him. But he would always come to fetch her back, and she would always let herself be fetched back. It was ineffable, like the rising and setting of Tamriel's twin moons. She was 6 months pregnant before she finally deciphered the location of the last staff piece, and an easy one, since every dark elf knew where the Mount of Dagoth-Ur was. When she next quarreled with the Nightingale, she simply left the city with Edwire and rode hard for High Rock and Wayrest. The Nightingale was furious, but there was little he could do. His assassins were rather inept, and he dared not leave his seat of power to pursue them in person. Nor could he openly declare war on Wayrest. He had no legitimate claim on her, or her unborn child. True to form, the imperial city's nobility had disapproved of his liaison with Baranzaya, as they had so many years ago of Tiber Septims, and were glad to see her go. Wayrest was equally distrustful of her, but Edwire's fanatical love by his prosperous little city-state and allowances were readily made for his eccentricities. Baranzaya and Edwire were married a year after the birth of her son by the Nightingale. In spite of this unfortunate fact, Edwire doted on her and her children. She, in turn, did not love him, but she was fond of him, and that was something. It was nice to have someone, and Wayrest was a good place for children to grow up. While they waited and bided their time, and prayed for the champion's success in his mission, Baranzaya could only hope he wouldn't take very long. Whoever this unnamed champion was, she was a dark elf, and she had all the time in the world. all the time, but no more love left to give, and no more hatred left to burn. She had nothing left, nothing but pain and memories, and her children. She only wanted to raise her family and provide them a good life, and be left to live out what remained of hers. She had no doubt it was going to be a long life, and during it she wanted peace and quiet and serenity of her soul, as well as of her heart. Peasant dreams. That was what she wanted. That was what the real Baronziah wanted. That was what the real Baronziah was. Peasant dreams. Pleasant dreams. Oh man, that was a long one. Oh my god. Whew. I was reading there probably 40 minutes straight. At least 30 minutes straight, probably. Jeez. It was good though. I liked it. I don't know, Real Baronziah. It was pretty interesting. I think, like, what they're talking about in the end with the unnamed champion. Unnamed champion is usually, like every Elder Scrolls game. Everything that happens in game is pretty much canon. So like, the protagonist that I'm playing right now, essentially, I'm the Nerevarine, gonna quest, defeat Dagothur, blah blah blah, in Morrowind, is like, once you go outside of the Morrowind game, like if you go into Oblivion, or go into any other, like, media that references stuff happening during the Morrowind game, it always calls, the main character of the game unnamed champion, or probably in Morrowind's case, it would be Nerevarine. In Skyrim's case, it would be the Dragonborn. In Oblivion's case, it would be, I think it's unnamed something as well. But, so I'm pretty sure they're referring to, pretty sure they're referring, referring to, the champion from either Arena or Daggerfall. I don't know which one this story ties into. I think it's Daggerfall. Because there was some stuff about escaping from a prison, and some stuff where it was saying it was in Daggerfall, so I think... The thing is, I don't know anything about Arena. I have no clue on the story of Arena, really. So I don't really know. It might be a tie into the Arena storyline. Then again, I've also heard that Arena was initially not even going to be like wasn't even initially going to really be an RPG. It was going to be like, an arena rather than, like having a storyline and all that stuff. But I don't know. I'd heard that like one time. I'm not sure if that's, how factual that is. But yeah, that was really interesting. Simicus, honestly, early on, such a fucking fucked up character at first, especially. Did he redeem himself by the end? Not really. I don't think what he did by the end of the story really makes up for all the absolutely shitty stuff he does at the start of it. I mean, he killed Straw and, fucked up a bunch of other shit. So, but, by the end, he was a compelling character by the end. I was like kind of rooting for him. Even though, fucked up dude, don't like him. Like, if you just take if you just remove the first half of the story and just take it from, like, when he starts, once the married life starts, He seems pretty great, honestly. But yeah.
Gods, one true.
Also, I'm not sure why this one wouldn't be in the InfVex library. Maybe it's because it talks about someone impersonating the Emperor, and that's not like the best to have in the like Vivek's, official library. Since they're sort of, allies, kind of subordinated to the Empire, they wouldn't want to have something in their library where they're like, oh yeah, someone impersonated an emperor for a really long time here. And so maybe it's that, and that's why it's not in Vivek's library. I don't know. And Jasper was here earlier. Seems like probably left already. Chang from Linux, and in Discord DMs you sent me a few video ideas. I'm not lacking in video ideas. I'm more lacking in time and effort. But yeah, so it was good. I liked it, but man, that took a bit out of me. That was long. I mean, that was like 30 minutes straight of reading at least. Probably like 30, 40 minutes straight reading. Wow. Okay. But yeah, Real Baron's Eye was a pretty well-written book, I think. Let's see if there's anything else here that I haven't read. I don't know if I've read Leech Said Dead. I think I've read that. It's Real Baron's Eye, Book of Daedra, Annotated Annuad, Origin of Mages Guild, Old Ways. Have I read that one? I don't know. Hold on. I need to change my controls here real quick. Hello, Kunal Posse. You're so confused. Is it worth it to buy Minecraft in sale? I mean, what is the sale? I mean, honestly, Minecraft is like, even outside of sale, it's like, what, 25 bucks? The way I look at games nowadays is like in regards to 50% off. So it's like 12 bucks, 15 bucks or something like that. I don't remember. I don't know how expensive Minecraft is. I haven't had to look at it that. It's around 15 bucks. Okay. The way I look at games nowadays really is 15 bucks should get you like I look at it like, for every hour that I play, I'm okay with spending, like, let's say $1 an hour. So for 15 bucks, do you think you're gonna play Minecraft for 15 hours? And that's like the bare minimum. If you play Minecraft for 15 hours and have a good time playing Minecraft for 15 hours, then it's a good deal. Right? That seems like pretty fair. And if you go over that, if you go like, play Minecraft for 30 hours, had a good time for 30 hours, you spend 15 bucks for that. That's a really good deal. That kind of thing. That's how I look at it nowadays. So, like, if you have friends that play Minecraft that you want to play with, then, like, especially this, if you have friends that you want to play with, definitely get it. And, you can afford it and all that. Don't have friends in Minecraft. Okay. I mean, you could just play Minetest. Minetest is great. There's Vox, Minetest is a game engine. It's open source. You don't have to just trust Microsoft that they're not gonna abuse your privacy and abuse the data they collect on you. Minetest is open source. You can look at the source code, and it's a game engine. People make games for Minetest. So there's like Voxel Libre, which is very inspired by Minecraft. There's stuff like Hades, where it's like a heavily survival type thing. There's quite a few servers as well. I'm playing on the Your Land server if you want to try that one out. There's a ton of stuff to do on Minetest. I definitely recommend it. I've had a great time with it. I own Minecraft, and I still decide to play Minetest because partially because I just like free and open source software a lot, but also because I like the experience for Minetest better, and it's a lot easier to make mods and games for the Minetest engine than it is to make that type of stuff for Minecraft. Hello, Jasper, again. Welcome back. But yeah, give Minetest a shot. It's free anyway, and I don't know. To me, as long as you get like, if you think you can get like 15 hours of enjoyment out of Minecraft, sure, it's fine to get it, and as long as you get that 15 hours of fun out of it, at the very least, then you've had a decent deal. Lua pair programming stream would go hard, trust. Yeah, I mean, maybe it would. Let's see. Cherum's Heart. I don't think I've read this. Oh, right. This was what I was gonna do before I got distracted. Controls. Activate should be E, and jump needs to be space. I forgot that all my controls reset. Where's jump? Jump, there we go. Space. Thanks, man, for your advice. Oh, yeah. Happy to help, I guess. Okay, I think that's the only one that I usually end up having to change if I play the game, is just switching activate and jump. Because for some reason, Morrowind default controls, E is jump and space is like to activate or talk to people. Like opening chests, opening books, all that stuff is space by default. And jumping is E. So weird. Okay, clearly I haven't read this. Cherum's Heart of Antiquina. I mean, I could read it first to figure out which category it's in. Or search my notebook first. Honestly, no clue where it's gonna be. If I don't see it, I guess I'll just read it first, and then once I read it, I probably know what category it should be in. I don't see it at all. Okay, don't see it in the notebook. Alright, well, I'll just read it first, I guess, and then that'll give me a clue on which category it should be in. Alright. Interviews with Take another sip. Alright. Interviews with Tapistrists. Volume 18, Cherum's Heart of Anakinna, by Livius Paris, professor at the Imperial University. Contemporary with Mahomet Lusine, interviewed in Volume 17 of this series, is the Khajiit Cherum, whose tapestries have been hailed as masterpieces all over the Empire for nigh on 30 years now. His 4 factories, located throughout elsewhere, make reproductions of his work, but his original tapestries command stellar prices. The Emperor himself owns 10 Cherum tapestries, and his representatives are currently negotiating the sale of 5 more. The muted use of color contrasted with the luminous skin tones of Cherum's subjects is a marked contrast with the old style of tapestry. The subjects of his work in recent years have been fabulous tales of the ancient past. The gods meeting to discuss the formation of the world, the Chimer following the prophet Veloth into Morrowind, the wild elves battling Morehouse and his legions at the White Gold Tower. His earliest designs dealt with more contemporary subjects. I had the opportunity to discuss with him one of his first masterpieces, the Heart of Anakinna, at his villa in Orkrest. The Heart of Anakinna presents an historic battle of the 5-year war between Elsewhere and Valenwood, which raged from the Third Era 394, or Third Era 395, depending on what one considers to be the beginning of the war, until Third Era 399. In most fair accounts, the war lasted 4 years and 9 months, but artistic license from the great epic poets added an additional 3 months to the ordeal. The actual details of the battle itself, as interpreted by Cherum, are explicit. The faces of 120 Wood Elf archers can be differentiated one from the other, each registering fear at the approach of the Khajiit army. Their hauberks catch the dim light of the sun, the menacing shadows of the Elsewhere battle cats loom on the hills, every muscle strained, ready to pounce and command. It is not surprising that he got all the detail right, because Cherum was in the midst of it, as a Khajiit foot soldier. Every minute part of the Khajiit medium-weight armor can be seen in the soldiers in the foreground. The embroidered edgings and stripe patterns on the tunics, each lacquered plate and on loose-fitting leather in the Elsewhere style, the helmets of cloth and fluted silver. Cherum does not understand the point of plate mail, said Cherum. It is hot, for one, like being both burned and buried alive. Cherum roared at the insistence of our Nord advisors during the Battle of Zelenin, and Cherum couldn't even turn to see what my fellow Khajiit were doing. Cherum did some sketches for a tapestry of the Battle of Zelenin, but Cherum finds that, to make it realistic, the figures came out very mechanical, like iron golems or Dwemer centurions. Knowing her Khajiit commanders, Cherum would not be surprised if giving up the heavy plate was more aesthetic than practical. Elsewhere lost the Battle of Zelenin, didn't she? Yes, but Elsewhere won the war. Starting at the next battle, the Heart of Anakinna, said Cherum with a smile. The tide turned as soon as we Khajiit sent our Nordic advisors back to Solitude. We had to get rid of all the heavy armor they brought to us and find enough traditional medium armor our troops felt comfortable wearing. Obviously, the principal advantage of the medium armor was that we could move easily in it, as you can see from the natural stances of the soldiers in the tapestry. Now, if you look at this poor perforated Cathirat, who just keeps battling on in the bottom background, you see the other advantage. It seems strange to say, but one of the best features of medium armor is that an arrow will either deflect completely or pass all the way through. An arrowhead is like a hook, made to stick where it strikes. If it doesn't pass through, a soldier in medium armor will find himself with a hole in his body, and the bolt on the other side. Our healers can fix such a wound easily if it isn't fatal, but if the arrow still remains in the armor, as it does with heavier armor, the wound will be reopened every time the fellow moves. Unless the Khajiit strips off the armor and pulls out the arrow, which is what we had to do at the Battle of Zelenin, A difficult and time-consuming process in the heart of battle, to say the least. I asked him next, is there a self-portrait in the battle? Yes, Sherm said with a grin. You see the small figure of the Khajiit sealing the rings off the dead wood elf? His back is facing you, but he has a brown and orange striped tail like Sherm's. Sherm's does not say that all stereotypes about the Khajiit are fair, but Sherm must sometimes acknowledge them. A self-deprecating style and self-portraiture is also evident in the tapestries of Ranulph Hook, the next artist interviewed in the volume 19 of this series. How interesting. Actually, that is kind of so. The art scene, all about tapestries, I guess. Yes, tapestries are a hot thing in Tamriel. Cool. Honestly, that doesn't give me much clue on where this is supposed to go. But also, honestly, my throat kind of hurts after reading The Real Baronzaya, because that was kind of insanely long. I was not prepared. I might end it here tonight. Yeah. I don't think I can keep reading. Maybe I could do like 1 or 2 more short books, but that's, pushing it. So I'm gonna call it a night. Hope you guys had a good time. And yeah, have a nice night, nice day, whatever time zone you're in. And yeah, peace.